Welcome to the Anchors Away podcast. I'm your host, Matt O'Hara, owner of the Queen Boat Co. Marina and Freedom Boat Club on Lake George, New York. Our full-service marina includes a service department, electric motor dealership, ship store, fuel dock, on-water DC fast charging station, and boat storage. Our marina and boat club have one goal: to make boating easier and more enjoyable. On our podcast, we speak with boating experts and industry leaders to learn about their passion for boating as a pastime and the exciting things they're working on in the industry. It is our hope that this podcast inspires new boaters to give it a try, gives existing boaters some new ways to improve their experience, and encourages used-to-be boaters to get back on the water. Hello and welcome back to Anchors Away. We had to take a bit of a hiatus recording episodes over the summer. Having a third kid and a growing marina business made time a little scarce, but it was great to kick it back off with Merrill Charette. While living on a sailboat the last 5 years, Merrill has launched several marine industry-focused businesses, products, and even a podcast. Merrill's marine industry digital agency helps marine businesses optimize their presence on the web. On the SHIPSHAPE podcast, Merrill interviews top boating journalists, experts, and liveaboards exploring the many perspectives of life on the water and in the maritime industry. At SHIPSHAPE.PRO, Merrill is working to connect boat owners and service providers to reduce the friction of boat ownership and help boaters remain boaters for longer. Merrill was also inventor of the Dinghy Thingy, which was featured at and saved the Newport Boat Show in 2019. We discuss life aboard a sailboat, how he got into the marine business, and much, much more. Enjoy. Well, Merrill, thanks for joining me. We have the pleasure of doing this over Zoom instead of just over Skype, how I used to do it, so I can actually see you and see that you're on your boat, which is pretty awesome, and B, see that due to some children of mine hiding my equipment, you are much more prepared on the technical side than I am. So thank you for having a good mic and looking forward to chatting.
Well, I am happy to be here.
So tell me a little bit about your background and where you are and what you're on.
Well, the background is a topsy-turvy tale, but as of right now, I am living on a boat in Boston, Massachusetts. So been in Boston Harbor on a Tashing Toshiba 36 for 5 years now. And winter is fast approaching. It's supposed to be 50 knots today, so we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, for some context, we are recording this on November 30th. So December hits tomorrow and temperatures are definitely dropping, but you've clearly dealt with winter before on the boat. What's it like?
So the winter is really not that bad. Generally, when I talk to people and tell them that I live on a boat, everyone says, "Oh, what do you do for heat?" If anything, the boat is more cozy than most people's apartment. I have a Mr. Buddy propane heater, and then I have a small electric heater, but it's not really a huge space, so it doesn't take much.
When did you first get attracted to boats and boating? Did you grow up with it or did you find it later in life?
Found it later in life. I had through hiked the Appalachian Trail in 2018, so walked from Georgia to Maine. While I was doing that, I got into law school in Boston, so I originally came to Boston to go to law school. The Appalachian Trail, which was 2,200 miles, took 172 days. So I started law school 3 days after that. Worst choice ever.
It's a bit of a mindset shift there, huh?
Yes, I showed up with this ginormous beard and this feeling of the want of adventure. And I was taking a train in from central Massachusetts, which is roughly like a 2-hour commute. And I met this lady on the train. She basically said, "You could always just live on a boat in Boston Harbor." So I typed into Google, "Can you live on a boat?" And Google said, "Do it." Called up my parents, said, "Hey, I'm going to be living on a boat." They're like, "You've never even been on a boat, but you hike the AT, so I guess you can figure it out." And that was the start of my whole marine odyssey.
So how did you figure it out? I mean, what are the first steps as an adult about to live on a boat who's never been on a boat? Where do you even begin?
Well, the first part is that you need to understand how big boats are. That was my first failing. I went on to Craigslist. I type in sailboat. And at the time, I thought 20 feet was from one telephone pole to another telephone pole. I'm like, that's huge, 20 feet. So the first boat I go to look at, I drive down to Connecticut, and it's supposed to be some 22-foot sailboat. So in retrospect, I'm at the shipyard. I'm looking at these boats that are on the hard that are 40, 50 feet, thinking to myself, well, that has to be 20 feet. Guy shows up, waves me to the other side of the marina. I'm like, oh man, the little boats here. I see the thing. I can touch either side of the walls if I put my arms out. Knew that this was definitely not going to work, and I needed a bigger boat. And then pretty much I had to upgrade how much size I was looking at and the cost ultimately as with it.
Although compared to rents in downtown Boston, you're probably not doing too bad on the cost.
Certainly not. It's definitely a cheap way of living. They say boat stands for bust out another thousand, which I would agree with. But if you don't have a house and a boat can be relatively affordable if it's just singular boat.
Yeah. How did you approach not just the buying a boat part, but like the learning to sail and learning to operate a boat?
I am an exceptional learner when it comes to reading books. And it's funny, if you read the instructions that some guy with a ton of skills took the time to write and you follow the directions, usually everything works out. I made friends early on as well. As soon as I looked at 36 boats before I had eventually purchased the boat I'm on now. And by the point of looking at 36 boats, it seemed that I knew everything about boats. So when I finally got the boat and the broker found out that I never even sailed before, his mind was blown. I had to do a crash course in reading about how to sail. Eventually figured it out relatively fast. Sailing, I feel, gets a rep that it's very difficult and all of that type of stuff, but it's really not. Sure, it'll take you a lifetime to become the best sailor ever, but it's pretty straightforward to get on a boat and start figuring out how to do it.
Were there one or two books that you would consider the best in terms of what got you up to speed?
Well, certainly Chapman's
Yeah,
Guide to
I can see that
Seamanship,
right
that's
behind you
one.
over your shoulder, the
Yeah.
Chapman.
Yeah, I was gonna look back. I'm like, well, what's it called? Yeah, Chapman Guide to Seamanship. There was the Annapolis Guide to Seamanship. That was a good one. And YouTube videos,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah, you can learn anything on YouTube now. Have you had to do a lot of upgrading or upkeep to the boat?
Boat was in pretty good shape when I got it, and the owner had taken really good care of it. But regardless, it's a boat, so it requires work. I've done a decent amount of stuff on it. I've gotten new sails, pretty much redid the whole engine and prop shaft and transmission. That was a huge one. A lot of battery cables, but the prices of things, they always just add up. And there were certainly a lot of projects when I got the boat that I did myself, but now it just seems way more efficient to just hire someone that knows what they're doing
Mhm.
and have them get it done.
Have you met a lot of other liveaboards in Boston Harbor?
There's a surprisingly large bit of liveaboards in Boston. Granted, I'm the youngest one at my marina that lives aboard a boat, but there's a decent community. They're all seemingly getting older. And the only young people I ever see really living aboard are the people that have the YouTube channels. That's really
Right,
about it.
right. Do you find that there's transient people adventuring in and out of Boston?
Every now and then, the tide will bring in some boat that looks like it's just taken a beating, and it's usually some couple that's been sailing around the world or something. But haven't really seen too much of that. During COVID, it was huge. Everyone was boating. And then it seems that this year there wasn't as much action on the water in Boston as there were in the previous years. Maybe everyone's getting a little tired.
So living on the boat, trying to figure out how to get work done and all that. And now you've determined that a lot of times it's easier to outsource it than do it yourself. Is that what sparked some of your business ideas?
As soon as I got the boat and I finally got it from to Boston Harbor, pretty much the first person I ran into ended up being my business partner. just a coincidence, I guess. And me and him had invented this physical product called the Dinghy Thingy, which was a multi-tool for dinghies. Essentially, it had a built-in bilge pump, speakers, a running light, USB charging, a solar charger on it. It could start up to a 50 horse. It was this whole thing. And we had that featured at the Newport Boat Show and the Boston Boat Show.
And but
Granted,
that was probably only what, a year after you got your boat. It wasn't too long after that, right?
exactly. So featured at the Newport Boat Show, we actually saved the Newport Boat Show. When I went, there was this crazy torrential downpour and the tent started sinking, and they couldn't get the enough of these like Everlast pumps up there. So we threw the Dinghy Thingy up like a hand grenade and had this built-in bilge pump just sucked out all the water. All the people were like, "Oh my God, I can't believe that worked." So that happened. And then we got into the Boston Boat Show for free. So that was pretty sweet. But I could never wrap my head around 1-800 China and be able to mass produce such a thing.
Mm.
And that was something I didn't really want to do. But all the connections I made along the way, I ended up just being a resource for boat owners if they needed anything. So person would come up, "Oh, do you know an electrician? Do you know a diver? Do you know a welder?" And I was giving them so many jobs that in my mind, I was like, I need to get paid for this.
Hmm.
So then I built a general contracting company for yacht repair in Boston. So team of divers, welders, engine mechanics, electricians, you name it. And I went from very few jobs to way too many. Kind of realized that marine is one of the last industries that is just almost solely word of mouth. And that's not a very good growth mindset, especially when it comes to younger guys coming into the industry. Essentially, if the industry is that you have to break the glass ceiling getting your first job or you're never going to make it, it's not a lot of room for people to get in. So we created SHIPSHAPE.PRO to combat that, but it eventually evolved into this needs to exist for the marine industry in general. Because if you think of marine with like pillars, like a Roman pillars, you have boat sales, product sales, and service. And the roof of this thing is the boat owner experience, what keeps people in. And the boat sales and product sales, those have gone with the times, right? There's been so many new boats that are being built and being sold, and then products are having such huge technological leaps to fall in line with the consumer because he's used to so many things in his everyday life. But the service providers, for the most part, have been forgotten, and there's not much structure with them, and it's very word of mouth, feast and famine. So we've attempted to try to combat that with the platform ShipShape, which connects boat owners and yacht owners to service providers.
Talk to me about the experience as a boat owner when I determine that ShipShape might be something I want to use. What does that look, feel, execution wise feel like?
Well, as of right now, we are an MVP. So there's many features that we haven't built in yet, but at the core of it, let's say if you had an issue with your Honda outboard, you could go online, type in Honda outboard on ShipShape.PRO, your location, and you'll find all the people that say that they work on Honda dealers. So we have around 2,000 service businesses on the platform already.
Wow.
And that's everything from varnish to plumbing to bottom paint, rigging, sales, Yanmar engines, everything.
Is that concentrated in the Northeast, or are you pretty spread across the country?
We're spread out across the country, but through the whole process of building out the database, really came to terms with how expansive the boat market is and how few service providers are. If we were to say that there are 11.7 million boats, that's just registered boats. And then if you exaggerated, there's likely probably 20,000 service provider businesses in the United States, which doesn't seem like a lot, but 20,000 still a decent amount. If we were to exaggerate and say it's 100,000, that's one business for 175 boats. And you can look around at most service providers and be like, you're definitely not working over 50 boats in a season. So there's a lot of opportunity that's being missed, which is resulting in a huge group of boat owners leaving the industry.
Mm.
That seems to be one of the big determinations if you're going to stay or not. It's like time on the water. So anything that gets in the way of your ability to utilize the boat is what kicks people out, which happens to be service.
Where do you see the app website going from here? If this is the MVP, what are kind of next steps to get it up to scale?
Well, what we plan to move towards is building out transactions in a booking feature, because right now the platform just connects the dots. We solved the first major problem, finding the service providers.
Yeah.
So what we want to move towards is building software for the service providers that they're able to keep track of the bookings that come in through ShipShape, keep accounting, be able to make payments, all that type of stuff.
Did you have any software background, or did you read more books and watch more YouTube for this too?
Well, I definitely did that, but I certainly wouldn't be where I am without having a solid team. My original business partner, T, that we did the Dinghy Thingy for, he actually had made the platform that Princeton Review uses to teach students online.
Hmm.
And he had also been a famous talk show host. So he went through all of his old contacts that he had from the days of being such a big name and voice, that we ended up building about a 30-person team relatively quickly.
Wow.
With everyone that knows how to do all the type of technology. I'm just like the face of it. And when I go to the boat shows and I talk to people, they're like, "Oh, you're a technology guy." I'm like, "No, I'm a marine guy."
Have you been doing the whole show circuit this fall so far?
I've done a ton of the show circuits in the past. This year I was pretty busy and doubled down with the amount of work that I was doing, but I plan on next year going to as many as I can, especially ones that are international. I sent a few of the team out to Dubai. That was the extent of what I did.
Very cool. And you have your own boating podcast. So tell me a little bit about that.
We originally started the ShipShape podcast under the impression that maybe that would bring traffic to SHIPSHAPE.PRO, but we quickly learned that the demographic that was listening was not necessarily people that wanted to use our platform. Most of them were like CEOs and founders, and they already had their things squared away. So after doing that for a while, we just decided to make it its own thing, and we've been expanding that ever since. We've interviewed some legendary names in marine, and it's to the point now where when I went to the Newport Boat Show, people were coming up to me being like, "You're Merrill?" I'm like, yeah. Let me buy you a drink. Like, it's great to be famous.
Excellent. You're talking to a lot of people between podcasting, between shows, between building up your service provider list. What are some of the trends you're seeing as we're approaching the end of the year here, heading into next year in the boating industry in general?
Well, the trends are, the bigger businesses are trying to figure out really kind of how to expand and what the future holds, and they have a little bit more resources in order to kind of gauge that. I know that some big names have reached out to us in regards to ShipShape trying to partner in a sense, because frankly, they think that the issues with service is going to be what really messes up the industry. So you have that. And then kind of on the smaller scale of business for the service providers, you have some young upstarts that are like, we want to expand and grow a business and do really well, and there's a ton of opportunity. But you also have the old salts that are kind of, we've done it this way for so many years, don't really want to change it up. So you can't really help everyone. And then the product companies, what's happening right now is that a lot of the product companies in order for them to sell a product, they need a service provider to install it, but they don't have access to a whole list of service providers that are capable of installing such a thing. So they're trying to figure out how to get more service providers to know about their products. It's an interesting scenario to be in, especially with marine. A lot of innovations in technology that we take for granted on land just haven't come over yet.
Are there any products at Newport, for instance, that caught your eye as being really exciting?
Hmm. Well, the guys from Flux Marine are always some interesting characters. They're the youngest guys that I know that have been working on creating an electric engine. They've been doing that for a little bit. And there's the guys from Boat RX. They're a younger group too. They're doing high efficiency air conditioning on yachts. So that's cool. And then I guess some of the innovations in regards to clean energy and renewables. But we did have a meeting with Nigel Calder a few weeks ago, and pretty much doomed the idea of electric engines being a sustainable way of boating in the future.
What was his take on that?
How much solar you would need on the boat to charge the batteries would just be too much. It ultimately comes down to the battery technology isn't there yet. There's not enough storage on these batteries to make any type of long distance cruising viable.
Yeah, is that something you were looking at for your own personal boat?
Well, I'm a diesel man all the way.
Do you have any long range trips planned in your future on your boat?
Next year, I plan on doing a decent amount of sailing through Maine, maybe sail up to Nova Scotia, then bounce around to all the different inlets along the way, maybe make a YouTube channel.
No, and in the future, potentially taking this thing down south. I mean, have you thought about that? Doing half the year, in the Virgin Islands or something?
There have been countless times that I've been invited to go to St. Thomas, but haven't gone yet. I've had a lot of journeys and experiences in my 20s. I just turned 30 like 2 weeks ago. So right now I'm like, okay, I'm going to do 5 years of probably busting my ass that
Mhm.
I can be sustainable and be able to travel. The issue that certainly gets presented, it's like, how do you work remote? And it's a lot easier when you don't have kids, right? So I got that going. But even if you were to say, let's be a YouTube star when it comes to sailing and you have 200,000 subscribers. Well, if that's the only plan that you have, at a certain point, you're going to be like, I'm tired of sailing. I want to do something else, but you don't really have too many backups.
Yeah.
So everything that I'm doing with all the different businesses, it seems like a lot, and it is a lot, but it's all to kind of propel myself to a point where, yes, I can be remote, be able to go to marinas anytime I feel like it instead of having to anchor or grab mooring balls. So that's what the game plan is.
What do you do for Wi-Fi on the boat?
Yeah, so Wi-Fi is difficult. And right now I use a hotspot, but I try to do a lot of background research in all the harbors and locations I go because the hotspot is like a visual type thing. Like if the phone can see the cell tower in a way, then you'll have a signal. So you can try to figure out on a map where all the cell phone towers are
Hmm.
and then try to figure out where you can move the boat. I've seen a lot of people start to get the Starlink thing
Oh, yeah.
that Elon Musk made, but there's some crazy rule that it's like 10 miles off the coast. It doesn't work anymore. So we'll see how all that goes down.
So if anyone you meet at a show or in a harbor thinks that the live aboard lifestyle sounds really cool and wants to get into it, what is the first piece of advice you would give them before they embark on that kind of journey?
Well, the first piece of advice I would say would probably be get a boat that costs a little bit more but has less work. Don't get a fixer up boat. That I feel like that has ruined so many liveaboards journeys. it's stupid.
Ruined before it even gets started. Screw this thing. I'm done.
Yeah. How many people I've seen get boats that the engines are messed up and in their mind, oh, I'll get all of it done, but the parts don't exist anymore and everything becomes way more difficult and everything will start to add up. A cheap boat is the most expensive boat.
Cool. Well, thank you for the time and thank you for bearing with my technical difficulties here. And I hope you do well in the 50-mile-an-hour wind and batten down and stay warm.
Awesome. It was great talking to Matt.
Yep. You too, Merrill. Take care. I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Merrill. Definitely check out all the great things he's working on. Check out that ShipShape podcast. Check out ShipShape.PRO if you're looking to get any work done on your boat and want to connect to a good service provider. And if you happen to be in the Boston Harbor, check out Merrill on his sailboat. Until next time, happy boating.